Hey, good afternoon. Meteorologist Craig Setzer with you on a Tuesday, November 1st. And unfortunately, we are talking about a busy time in the tropics. And I usually do these live updates when there's something out there to talk about. Unfortunately, we're talking about two things, plus potentially a third thing. I'll break it all down in detail as we wait on the new advisories for Tropical Storm Martin and Tropical Storm Lisa. Of course, if you like the videos, please click the like button, the subscribe button, get the notifications. That apparently helps elevate it in the YouTube hierarchy of things. And lets you see, and people who don't get this information, which I consider hurricane preparedness information, they get to see that it's elevated basically on the platform. All right, as I always like to do right off the bat, let's talk about the areas that we're watching, because if you're not in an area that is being threatened, then guess what? You don't have to watch any more of the video beyond this. I'm not going to bury the headline, and we're going to get right to it. Talk about what is out there, what's going on. First off, of course, most importantly is Lisa, a strong tropical storm forecast to become a hurricane and threaten mainly Belize here. Could impact the Caribbean coast of Guatemala, as well as the Bay Islands of Honduras there. This northern coast of Honduras is going to be on the northern portion of the storm's southern portion. So northern coast of Honduras on the storm's southern side, which is, all evidence is indicating it's the weaker side. The storm is also a bit lopsided in that the stronger winds have been mainly on the east side. So this is going to be the kind of case where the storm comes ashore. As it comes ashore, the winds will increase, of course, as the center comes ashore, and then the winds are going to last, as well as the storm surge coming in after the center pushes inland. If there's any good news about this situation, it's that the core is relatively small. That worst part of the hurricane eye wall feature there, that's the good news, because that means that the extent of the tropical storm and hurricane conditions, especially the hurricane conditions, if it becomes a hurricane, is going to be smaller. The bad news is that when we have these small, compact cores, the chance for them to intensify quickly is higher than normal, as opposed to a bigger storm where usually the intensification curve or rate is a bit slower. So the good news is it's a smaller hurricane core. The bad news is that it could intensify quickly, as it has about 24 hours left now before it reaches landfall. They're making landfall somewhere on the northwest Caribbean coast. We'll go into a little bit more detail on that. So that's our main area of concern. Of course, this is the hurricane preps graphic here. If you're in the red, you should be doing hurricane preps, and you're running out of time in Belize, the far southeast part of the Yucatan, as well as Guatemala and the far western coast, as well as the Bay Islands of Honduras. I know folks have been evacuating from San Pedro Island there in Belize, near the coast there, getting off that island. Of course, the coastline of Belize, relatively low line, so storm surge is going to be a problem, especially near and to the right or to the north of where the center makes landfall. Still too early to tell exactly where that's going to happen. So that's Lisa. The other system we're watching is Martin. Martin, thankfully, is going to stay out in the open Atlantic. It is not going to be an issue for any land features here. It's moving away from Bermuda. Martin formed from an ocean low pressure area that kind of evolved and transitioned from a non-tropical ocean low pressure system into a subtropical and tropical storm. Now it's taken on tropical characteristics. It is also forecast to become a hurricane, which kind of unusual to have two hurricanes in the Atlantic at the same time. The last time that happened was in 2001. We had Michelle and Nicole at the same time. Doesn't happen often, but happens, and usually it's kind of an active period of the latter part, obviously, of the hurricane season. There's a third area we're going to be talking about as well, which kind of will have some folks, at least maybe in the Bahamas, maybe in the Northeast Caribbean and the Southeast U.S. coast, watching it as well. We'll be watching it here in Florida, but we'll get into detail on that as we go forward. So let's get first off talk about what is going on. This is kind of our deeper dive segment. So if that's all you needed to know and you're good to go, be sure to tune in tomorrow afternoon. I'll have another update. But in the meantime, let's go ahead and take a deeper dive. So here's what's going on out there in the Atlantic. We have, of course, in the far left side of the screen here, that is Lisa, located right down here. And you can see right on the corner of the screen there, don't worry, I'll show you a closer up graphic of Lisa. There is Martin, by the way, up there. That's formed, and it also is moving to the west. And what you can see from these two features here is that there's really not a lot else going on for the moment in the Atlantic. We'll go over here to the water vapor loop, and you can see that there's a bit of shear coming across the northern Gulf of Mexico there. There's a lot of dry air right now over the Bahamas and the far southwest Atlantic. A couple of these big upper level lows, one right here, and then of course we have Martin right there. And what we're going to have happen here, and I'll show you the models in just a few minutes here, is that we're going to have a couple of disturbances in the jet stream drop down and carve out a pretty deep low pressure system in the middle and upper parts of the atmosphere, probably sometime late in the weekend or next week in this general area of the Southwest Atlantic here. And if it sits there long enough, it may also transition like Martin did from a non-tropical system to a tropical system. Now, why is that important? Why is this non-tropical, tropical distinction made? What we know is that tropical systems have their strongest winds near the center. Non-tropical systems, the stronger winds are away from the center. And tropical systems, especially in lower latitudes where we are here in Florida, they can get strong, quite strong, as opposed to ocean systems in the North Atlantic and the Southern Atlantic. They can get quite strong as well. But unlike non-tropical systems, which have their strongest winds away from the low pressure center, tropical systems have their strongest winds near, very close to the center there. So that's the distinction we like to talk about there, and that's why we pay attention to tropical systems here in Florida as elsewhere. All right, let's zoom in here. This is on Lisa now, and you can see the storm envelope has improved considerably here. The shear has dropped. It's a much rounder system, but it's really the action part of the tropical storm is right there in the center. It's not a terribly large tropical storm. The wind field doesn't extend out very, very far, but once again, as I said, these more compact tropical storms, they do have the potential to strengthen a little more quickly, so that's something we're going to be watching. That also shows up here in the infrared loop, and these darker colors right there towards the center, that's where the core is. What we'll be watching for is for that to go from those dark, very dark colors there, and you can see these little lighter colors kind of starting to pop out right there at the end of the loop. So those lighter colors will be an indication of intensification going on, and you can see it. There's some pretty persistent heavier thunderstorms here towards the center, also an indication of an intensification trend or a maturing trend going on there. And then we do have on the eastern side kind of this squall that's extending down. This is going to be, there's the coast of Honduras right there. So that's going to be kind of, as it all moves to the west, that is going to continue and extend over that area as well. During the afternoon, hurricane hunters have been investigating, and hurricane hunters finding that the pressure has been starting to drop a bit. The winds have been starting to come up as well, and it's kind of making a line just west. Okay, there is it's our Lisa advisory that's coming in. So let's go ahead and get to that right away. All right, so you're seeing it here with me as it comes in. Hurricane warnings in effect for the Bay Islands and also for the coast of Belize, as well as a small part of the coast of Guatemala, all the way up into extreme southeast parts of the Yucatan Peninsula there. There's no changes to the watches or warnings. Hurricane watch does extend farther to the north there. So once again, hurricane warnings here, hurricane warnings basically there, right up to about there, and then the hurricane watch extends farther to the north, right up there to that part of Mexico on the Yucatan Channel there. So we've got kind of a mix of our advisory here, and it should update here now. We should see it click up to 5 p.m. And the rest of this has begun to update here as we go forward into time. So I'm literally looking at two different graphics here as the data comes in, the advisory data comes in, and so we've got winds at 65 miles an hour. So now this is all going to be updating here, and as it does, we will be able to show you the latest information. Moving to the west at 15, remember that track is just a little bit to the northwest of due west as it goes forward there, and we'll go ahead and look at the advisory here because the advisory is coming in as I speak. So actually, you know what? Let's do this because the advisory is not updating, and I don't. Well, there it updated. So how about that? Let's go back. Let's start from scratch and give you the latest advisory. So we've got everything together here. All right. So there is the 5 o'clock advisory. Once again, updated now. Winds from 60 miles an hour at 2 p.m. to 65 miles an hour. So we're about 10 miles an hour shy of hurricane intensity. Moving to the west, west-northwest, so it's not due west, slightly northwest of due west, at 15 miles an hour. The fast speed means that folks here along the coast don't have much more time to continue preparations. Maybe a brief window tomorrow morning, but the thinking would be to try to have your preparations wrapped up, hurricane preparations wrapped up there. Belize, southeast coast of the Yucatan here, have that wrapped up by sunset this evening. So that's only a few hours left. Pressure is down. Now, hurricane hunters are going to be investigating this evening. We'll have a new pressure indication there, and about 220 miles east of Yucatan, Honduras. I'm sorry if I butchered that name there. All right, there is the track. I should do better with Spanish names there. I apologize for not doing that. So here's our forecast track. This is the 2 a.m., so 2 hours after midnight tonight. The forecast is for it to be a hurricane by then, and then there is 2 p.m. tomorrow afternoon. Remember, as I always say when I show the forecast, that little white line there, that is the cone. Does it matter if you're in or out of the cone? No. What matters within 3 days is, are you in or out of the tropical storm conditions, which are those right there? Are you in or out of the hurricane conditions, which are expected to be somewhere in that area right there? That's what matters. And you can see here, because of this fast motion here, there's not going to be a lot of time for preparations tomorrow as the storm center gets closer and closer to the coast there and the bad weather begins to arrive. And then as the center of the storm arrives, of course, no preparations can continue. In fact, once the tropical storm winds arrive and the gusty winds start to arrive, you really don't want preparations going on there. So that's 2 p.m. tomorrow afternoon. Let's go forward here. There is then tomorrow night, and then we go into Thursday afternoon, Friday afternoon. And notice this here, there's a bit of extension here on the Hurricane Center's forecast track, which does go into the far southwest Gulf of Mexico. The Bay of Campeche there has a tropical depression, and then a weakening disturbance there in the southwest Gulf of Mexico. So this, a little bit of a change. Now, if the storm core is very, very tight here and it collapses in southeast Mexico, it's possible that it doesn't survive the transit into the far southwest Gulf. However, there's that possibility now that it does survive. Also, one of the things that I saw was that the hurricane rapid index indicator, the rapid intensification indicator, had gone up, showing about a 50% chance that it'll go 35 mile an hour wind increase within 24 hours. So that's that with Lisa. So once again, just to kind of summarize here, with Lisa, folks in Belize, the southeast part of the Yucatan there, as well as Guatemala, and the Bay Islands of Honduras, which is right there. You can see they're in the red area there. They're not in the cone, but they're in the red area, all under the hurricane warning, and all expecting the possibility of hurricane conditions, and should all have the preparations wrapped up this evening, if not tomorrow. Okay, so that's Martin that's coming in. So at the bottom of the screen here now, the crawl on the bottom of the screen will update. Martin's estimated central pressure 991 millibars, and I don't have a complete Martin graphic because Martin is forecast to stay out at sea there. So let's jump back over here, back to our deeper dive portion, and talk a little bit about this intensification thing here. So here is for Lisa, and this is the intensification forecast from some of the models this afternoon. Now, one of the things that kind of jumped out here with the intensification, by the way, there's the rest of the Martin advisory coming in. One of the things that kind of jumped out here with the intensification is that some of these hurricane models increased their intensification trend there here this afternoon. They kind of went on up into more of this Category 1 bordering on Category 2, right up in that area up there. And so Category 1, Category 2 is pretty strong. And there's one model that has gone now. It's the the HAFS model, that's from the Hurricane Research Division, it has gone even higher there. The official forecast is kind of in this range here, this low end category 1, and then you can see a pretty good spread of the models here, from some models that only show some modest intensification to very high end tropical storm. Of course, sometimes it's hard to distinguish when you're being hit by a high end tropical storm, where the high end tropical storm conditions end and the low end hurricane conditions, Hurricane 1 conditions are there. So there are some of the models. This is from the HAFS model here, and you can see this one value here. That's the one. There's two HAFS models. There's the HAFS A, which is usually kind of on the weaker side, and there's the HAFS S, which is usually on the stronger. That's the HAFS A right there, which is up into the low end category 3 intensity range, and then the the other HAFS model here, which didn't strengthen it too much at all. The reason I'm pointing it out is because this HAFS model is going to be our newer hurricane model in the coming years, something that we will be focusing on as a reliable hurricane model, and it's going to be interesting to see how these models do with the storm here. The HAFS model did very well with Ian showing very strong category 4 at landfall, so that's certainly something that we're going to be watching here. All right, so let's get away from the what's out there right now and talk kind of about what's coming. This is the European model here. This is the ensemble models, and we have three things showing up here. In our model field, we have, of course, Lisa, which is down here, which is forecast to move to the west there, making landfall tomorrow. And then a few of the model members break off to the southwest there into the eastern Caribbean. A few of them show it kind of curving here, getting caught down there in the southern Gulf of Mexico. But then after that, all the models, at least of the European ensemble, they dissipated in the far southwest Gulf of Mexico. So we'll keep our eyes on that. But there's going to be some pretty good wind shear up here in the central Gulf. So that is certainly an indication that it's not a real favorable environment for this to then become something that we have to watch going northeast. Earlier in the year, of course, we would watch something like that, but we're getting to the time of the year where we get these jet stream dips that are farther and farther to the south, and they create unfavorable conditions unfavorable for tropical systems. There's Martin up there. Martin forecast to zip on off into the northern Atlantic, so nothing going on there. And then look at this. These little members start to show up here. This now is in the 7, 8, 9, and 10-day time frame. The National Hurricane Center did outlook this area this afternoon in their tropical weather outlook, and we'll let it kind of loop one more time here, because there's not a lot of certainty with what the models are doing here. There's this trend kind of to the west. Some members develop farther to the south, kind of to the northwest, kind of in a general direction of the southeast U.S. So certainly something to keep our eyes on here. But once again, this is in the 5-day time frame and beyond. So we're talking, what's today, Tuesday, so we're talking Sunday, Monday, probably at its earliest, and then maybe Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday of next week. So that's the European model here, which I believe when you look at it, it kind of has what could be kind of a believable time frame there. Now the GFS, of course, the Twitter sphere and weather Twitter is going to go crazy with the GFS because the GFS kind of acting crazy. First off, let's talk about the tropical storm Lisa there making landfall, and then the GFS has some members there kind of circling back on themselves and falling apart. So once again, none of the models right now showing that Lisa survives any type of time frame here in the southern Gulf of Mexico. Lisa gets taken care of after it crosses Mexico there and into the far southern Gulf of Mexico, provided that it does make it that far. The other thing, of course, there's Martin up there. Martin goes zipping on off to the northeast into the North Atlantic, so once again, not watching Martin. Now here's where the craziness of the GFS begins. First off, the GFS has this trend of developing what we call low-level vorticity, or a twist in the atmosphere under certain conditions. It tends to take that to the north there, and then it kind of starts to wrap it into this upper level low that's sitting here and spinning here at the same time. So it's spinning all kinds of members, some off to the west, some off to the northwest, some off to the north. I mean, it really, really has what I would almost call noise here, because there's so many possibilities of something happening here, including the possibility that nothing happens. So we're looking at a huge gambit. So for all of those of you watching Yeah, don't get overly crazy on this. I know people like to post these, 120 to 240 and beyond 240, which is 10-day models here. Don't buy it for a second here. If this verifies, this would certainly be some stormy, yucky weather for Florida. Certainly not good boating or beach weather here, but we don't even know if that's going to verify at this point. Let me just go a step further here and kind of show you, because these are the ensemble members here. Let's show you what some of the other models are showing here. I'm going to skip that. That is the HAFS model from Lisa. So this is the European model here, and this kind of is what a lot of hurricane forecasters look as kind of the initial conditions here. So we're looking at three things here, and boy, this really is the deep dive. I need the deep dive plus sign here. So we're looking at three things here in this model forecast. This is the European. We're looking at what we call low-level vorticity. So that's the swirl or the center of a tropical system. We're looking at the mid-level or 500 millibar heights. So this would be kind of the steering current. So this would be a high that's up here. And so then the steering, as you can see with Lisa, is off to the west. You can also see there's a pretty good jet stream branch right there moving along. And then we're looking at the high level, and that's the wind barbs here. Those are the high level winds. These are the 200 millibar winds. So the three things we're seeing here is the low level model center. We're looking at the mid level model steering, and we're looking at the upper level model wind shear there. So those are the three things that when we kind of do a cursory glance at a model, especially for tropical conditions, that's what we see. So we're going to go forward into time here. You can see Lisa moving to the west there. You can see Martin moving to the east. And we see the beginnings of these two features starting to crash down here. Especially this one really strong feature right there. And it's beginning to cut off, and it's being enhanced a little bit by what is off to its east. So this is when I say being cut off, it's being cut off by the steering flow, which means that it's probably going to become stationary. And we're also seeing what we call a blocking pattern setup. So we've got a feature back off here to the west, that's a trough. We've got this high, this blocking high here. And we've got that upper level low kind of cutting off there. You can also see that there is what we call some low level twist here, probably with a front or some feature. And there is some low level twist over here that is showing up in the model. So this is through 4 days right there. Here we go into 5 days, and you can see that our little feature here at 5 days has become stationary. So it's not moving, and it's got some type of low pressure system and a front that is wrapping around it. This is a nasty ocean storm here. Very, very bad boating conditions, squally weather. Folks in the North and Northeast Caribbean, this is not going to be nice at all. There you can still see in 5 days the remnant of Lisa there, or maybe even a tropical depression or low pressure area of Lisa. And you can see this is not moving, and it's sitting over warm waters. This is the upper level and mid-level low pressure area. So let's go a little bit farther forward into here. And by the way, I don't know if there's anybody even watching anymore, but if you are, it's a little tropical lesson here. Sometimes I just have to get those tropical lessons out of my system. So here we are into 6 days, and then there's 6 days right there. And you can see our front now has occluded. We've got some low-level rotation. They're starting to consolidate under this mid-level rotation. It still has what we would think of as non-tropical or maybe hybrid, which is tropical and non-tropical characteristics. And then as we go on through time here we are into 7 days. So that is a week away. And you can see this low-level feature now starting to consolidate. Maybe it's becoming tropical and drifting to the northwest. That's a possibility. And it looks like the stormy weather is arriving in Florida here a week away. Let's go a little bit more forward here, mainly just because it gets so crazy. So is this believable? Maybe, who knows? It's out there beyond 7 days, beyond 5 days. But the suggestion is that some type of feature breaks away and goes on to the north there. All right, so let's show you the GFS, which I like to almost show because it kind of really goes crazy in its solution. Once again, in the GFS, there is the surface feature. So that's Lisa. There's Martin up there, and let's go forward here. So here we are through 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, And you can see our low pressure area breaking off there. So by 3 days and 4 days, whoops, let me get out of that. I don't want that there. No, I don't want you on my screen. So by 3 days and 4 days already this low is cutting off. So this is going to be something we're going to be able to observe on the satellite pictures here. But look at this down here. This is this vorticity that the GFS tends to, what I like to think of as shed from the Andes Mountains down here. It kind of gets into the Gulf or into the Caribbean, and then it's sometimes gets pulled into something. We saw this early in the season where it got kind of sucked up there, and maybe it's something that happens here, because as we go forward into time here, look at that. Look at this stuff down here getting pulled up into this great big low pressure system. All these little circles here. This is what I would call spurious areas of vorticity, which means it's just being created in the model here. It's hard to buy. And then here we are. We're now through day 6, which is next Monday. And here we are coming into day 7. There's day 7 right there. And it also has now some weird kind of model there. I got to figure out why it does that. Some kind of weird model low pressure system there by day 7. And then we'll go forward just a little bit more here, because it's just kind of crazy to show. And I just want to keep reemphasizing that until we have a coherent system formed out there, it's going to be hard to buy this. And then it somehow gets whipsawed across into the Gulf of Mexico, where the model says that just all craziness is breaking loose. What does it mean in the end? It means we're just going to have to watch. It means that hurricane season is not over. Does it mean that we do any type of preps or anything for this model system that's developing out there? No. If you've got your hurricane preps together, don't touch anything. Don't use anything, but don't touch anything. We'll get through this, I think, just fine here, because it's later in the year now, and the model has what I think of as a lot of dynamics with it here. So it's harder to develop a strong, coherent hurricane as we get later in the system here in the season here, with all of these upper level features influencing it as well. So just a lot to talk about here, and obviously I have talked a lot today, but regardless, thanks for watching. Of course, if you liked the video, click the like button, click the subscribe button, and get the notifications. And I promise I will do a shorter video tomorrow, maybe.